the Amiga computer. Since its introduction in 1985, the Amiga has turned more heads with its amazing ability to support animation, graphics, music, publishing, education, entertainment, and more. Amiga World Magazine has been there since the beginning. Now we're bringing you closer than ever to the excitement of the Amiga. For the first time, we'll help you hear, see, and almost feel the amazing qualities of this computer system up close and personal. Introducing the Amiga World Video Library. This ever-expanding series of videotapes will take you inside the world of Amiga and will give you insight, instruction, and valuable data on why the Amiga is one of the most powerful and sophisticated computers ever developed. We'll show you how to get started with your first system. Get it up and running. We'll teach you about using the workbench, CLI, and shell. You'll get valuable advice about peripherals, tips, tricks, and much, much more. And once you've become comfortable, we'll share the amazing world of sight and sound that makes the Amiga what it is today. Learn about graphics and design in the Amiga Graphics series. We'll explain the differences in paint programs and teach you how to get started with Deluxe Paint 3. Learn about design and learn from experts who use computers for a living. The Amiga has a host of fonts available for it. We'll tell you how to pick a font, which ones are the most useful, and how to create special effects. Desktop video is one of the Amiga's strong suits. Learn about cameras, editing, titling, animation, and how to get the most from your desktop video system. We'll show you what a Genlock is, how to use your camera, which items are worth your hard-earned dollars, and how to use them. Take a look into the world of Amiga music. Ever feel the need to create some high-energy music on your computer? Even if you've never had a music lesson in your life, you can create a complete rock and roll hit using the Amiga. We'll show you how. So don't get left out. We're ready to get you involved like you've never been before. The Amiga World Video Library doesn't stop here. As time goes on, we'll continue to introduce new titles that you've been asking for. We'll give you an inside look at the Amiga, including the amazing Amiga 3000. We'll show you how to animate, edit, and produce your own videos. We'll introduce you to experts in their fields and high-power users of the Amiga. If you've ever been curious about your Amiga, we'll bring the experience closer than you thought possible. We'll give you the inside line on using the Amiga for fun and profit. So sign up today and get involved. Ask your retailer about the Amiga World Video Library or check the latest issue of Amiga World Magazine for the latest releases. The Amiga World Video Library is your ticket to success. When Edwin S. Porter introduced the first fictional motion picture, The Great Train Robbery, at the beginning of the century, the nation was taken by surprise. Until then, movies were often regarded as experimental sideshows. Porter's film reached out and touched the heart of America. Movies have never been the same since. Videotape has brought the magic of film to the consumer. During the days of Super 8 film home movies, people could capture the images for their archives. However, because the cameraman could not see his results until the film was developed, the final result was often jittery or poorly lit. Home movies rarely featured sound. The cost of film with sound, not to mention the time for developing and editing, was beyond the reach of most people. Today, videotape, with its instant playback and excellent audio and video quality, allows anyone to become an Edwin S. Porter in their own backyard. Desktop video isn't just graphics on videotape. It's computer graphics mixed with videotape on your desk right now. It's Edwin S. Porter all over again, without taking out a second mortgage on your house or robbing a bank. Desktop video is new, it's exciting, and almost anyone can do it. "20 years ago, if you wanted to make a motion picture, you'd have to meet the right people, acquire lots of cash, and work your way up through the ranks of aspiring movie makers. That meant time, pain, and all the things that go along with a Hollywood lifestyle. Today, video technology is available to anyone. The most important element in making a video movie is creativity. The evolution of desktop video makes that creative element more valuable and easier than ever before. However, before you run out and spend a dime on video equipment and computers, it's a good idea to think about your interests and needs. Nobody can make a video production look good by just spending money. It takes a few other elements to be successful. Having a good reason to make videos is a good start. That's actually the easy part. There are hundreds of reasons for using video and computers in presenting ideas. Ad agencies, artists, travel companies, schools, industry, high technology, and education are just a few of the applications ripe for desktop video productions. Are you an aspiring filmmaker? When Steven Spielberg made his first amateur motion pictures, the only medium he had available to him was 8mm movie film. Imagine what he could have created with the desktop video equipment available today. Yet Spielberg and many others were undaunted by the lack of production equipment available to non-professionals. Their desire to express themselves via the medium of film was enough to propel them to actually create films, even though the equipment they used was simple and limiting. In many cases, the most significant factor that came through in these types of films and in today's video is the artist's creativity. For many people, creativity is the magic word in motion picture and video production. Terry Sanders is a motion picture director and producer. He's an Emmy and Academy Award winner, and his films are considered by many to be brilliant and thought-provoking. Terry teaches filmmaking between projects and uses video as the work medium.
Why are people filmmakers? They're filmmakers because they have something to say, and they want to say it through film. And they want to say it with their own, the freedom to say it the way they want to say it, not the way a studio or somebody with the money tells them to say it. And so that creative freedom is something that is like a gift that the video revolution has brought. You can make a film the way you want to make it in a way that 10, 20 years ago might have been impossible.
Video has certain advantages over other methods of communication. A visual image complemented by sound can describe almost any situation. Some of the advantages of video production include the cost of production is substantially less than film. The cost of duplication and distribution is also less than film. The target market will usually already be familiar with video. A taped program can be reused hundreds of times. The program can be cued to play at any point without expensive equipment, and many types of media can be combined to create a powerful statement.
I think that before video, there was a wall a wall of expense which separated talented people from the ability to make motion pictures, videos, films, whatever. With the advent of video, that wall is totally dissolved. And anyone with talent, determination, and the interest in doing it can just go right ahead and get to work and learn and make motion pictures. So that's just a huge difference. In the old days, you had to have a very rich uncle, or you had to have some amazing stroke of luck to somehow get into a studio situation.
The last advantage of video may be its strongest. Slides, film, paintings, and computer graphics can all be linked together by video. When compared to other types of presentations, there is no better cost alternative. If you're serious about your desktop video work, you may consider setting up a complete studio for creating video projects. This is a good example of a studio-oriented desktop video environment. There are several machines for playback, a master recorder for the final edit, a controller to manage the operation of all the machines, a switcher for selecting which information you want, and an Amiga for graphics and special effects. Many studios also feature extra equipment called outboard gear that can be used to add dimension to a show. Some of this gear includes multi-track audio, digital video effects or DVE, and support equipment to ensure the quality of the show at every stage of production. One thing that most studios work hard to attain is protection against loss of quality. The video and audio signals are monitored in a variety of ways, and the operator will have the ability to adjust or tweak the signals to make sure they're as good as they can get. Typically, the home desktop video system will include an Amiga computer, at least one VCR, and some software. With a system like this, you'll be able to record from the Amiga to videotape. If you add a second VCR, you'll be able to record from tape and the Amiga. Often, a home desktop video system will include one VHS or 8mm recorder and a camcorder. The camcorder will be used to record the original tape in the field, then as a player when in the production phase of the show. The home editing system will probably not have many of the outboard devices used in a studio setting, such as digital video effects. Also, the home operator will need to spend more time monitoring the quality of the tape signal throughout the editing process. We'll talk more about editing later. During the past 5 years, video equipment has evolved into categories. Although there are always exceptions to the rules, these categories can form the basis for deciding what types of equipment best suit your particular needs. The categories include broadcast, industrial, semi-pro, and consumer. Based on the cost of most broadcast equipment, we will eliminate it from our desktop video decision list. If you can afford to equip your home or office with 1-inch broadcast gear, you can also run out and buy a Wavefront or Pixar computer for a couple of $100,000. All those with enough cash, do so now, raise your hands. Before discussing some of the various types of equipment, it's important to note that the video industry changes more rapidly than many other consumer-oriented markets, including audio and cars. Even if the model mentioned is discontinued when you're ready to buy something, most video retailers will be able to provide you with the latest version of the specific equipment you ask for. Industrial video is probably the high end of the applicable desktop video market. 3/4-inch machines are available for a cost in the thousands, and that amount of money will get you professional quality equipment with broadcast quality results. The highest quality in semi-professional use will come from the ED Beta line of equipment. Sony makes several player recorders with excellent capabilities, including the EDV 7500 and the EDV 9500 VCRs. If you're interested in Beta-style equipment, then ED Beta is the way to go. VHS is quickly becoming the video rental playback device for the home and apartment. If you're interested in making movies and you don't yet own any equipment, you'll probably consider SVHS or High 8 camcorders for your work. There are a number of good quality VHS recorders and camcorders on the market, still, with more being introduced every year. The benefit of using standard VHS is price. There are a number of VHS cameras on the market for well below $1,000 retail, and there are standard VHS recorders being sold for less than $300. So bringing the video experience home is truly becoming affordable. Many people's favorite format is the Sony-developed High 8 system. With a complete line of recorder players and camcorders, High 8 is here to stay. The benefits of High 8 include the ease of use, high picture quality, and wide range of support equipment. Most importantly, there is a range of both consumer and industrial High 8 equipment available, so you can mix and match equipment as you see fit. There are a great number of video cameras on the market. The most commonly used cameras for desktop video work will be VHS, 8mm, or High 8 format. Broadcast professionals will probably use 3/4 inch and Betacam units, although there are some fantastic new SVHS and High 8 units available. The 8mm and High 8 formats represent the leading technology in camcorder development. Videomaker magazine projected that 8mm camcorders accounted for up to 30% of all camcorders purchased in 1987, less than 3 years after the format was introduced. Today, the ratio is closer to 50%, with High 8 climbing in at almost 15%. Why is 8mm and High 8 so good for desktop video? Well, there are two key reasons. The 8mm format is light and easy to transport, and editing capabilities are exceptional.
I would say that when one comes to purchase equipment, one does want to look at purchasing that which is the best for your purposes and that which is coming out in the year that you buy it. I mean, I think it's important not to buy old technology, even though it's discounted. I think it's important to buy the best technology for your purpose that's however been tested, not necessarily something that's just come out on the market, because probably there are bugs in it, but the best technology that's been tested, the latest, and probably you can expect then a lifespan of 5 to 10 years of usable life without any problem of obsolescence.
The Amiga computer has played a significant role in opening the doors to desktop video producers. The computer is capable of producing animations, graphic backgrounds and foregrounds, sounds, audio tracks, and more. These elements can be combined in the Amiga environment as well, increasing the flexibility and power of the system. Most importantly, the Amiga is able to produce these amazing effects and send them to videotape in a readable form called NTSC. This NTSC signal is made up of 525 horizontal lines, of which 287 are displayed as picture information, split into 2 screens or fields, each one alternating every 60th of a second. The result is a complete picture displayed every 30th of a second. After the first field is displayed, the second field is shown, but is shifted 1 scan line down, so it becomes interlaced with the first field. This is where the term interlace comes from. It's important to note that the interlaced scan lines do not move directly horizontally across the screen. They are lower on the right side of the screen. What you don't see is the line moving from the right to the left, connecting the next scan line. This is called retracing. As you might guess, the wider the screen, the further the scan line will move vertically. By the way, with a little math work, you'll be able to figure out that ending the scan lines earlier will reduce the vertical screen movement. When used for a graphics display, this will affect resolution. When producing graphics or animation for television, it is important to note that a typical TV monitor expects to see a dual-field interlaced signal. If it doesn't, it won't know how to distinguish between the even and odd scan lines. As a result, the image will jitter, or may not even be visible. Combining a graphic signal with a live video signal complicates things even further. As the Amiga provides an interlaced signal, Its ability to generate graphics directly to videotape and to TV monitors is built in. For combining video and graphic signals, a device called a Genlock is used. A Genlock will enable you to get high-quality output from your Amiga onto videotape, plus provide you with the ability to superimpose your images onto a live video signal. There are a number of Genlocks available. The simplest ones only cost a few $100s, while the most expensive ones are often several $1,000s. Whatever you do, don't compromise your ability to create the best quality shows possible. A simple Genlock will provide only the NTSC output to your Amiga. In this sense, it really is an NTSC output device. A more sophisticated Genlock will include inputs for video signals, fade to black, or fade to color capabilities, and more. When selecting a Genlock, consider what you're trying to accomplish. If you're creating animation films, you only need the Genlock output. If you're combining animation, graphics, and live video, you'll probably want to have the added power of fades and video overlays. Whenever possible, see if you can test the output of the Genlock at the dealer. Of course, this may not always work, so ask around and read articles such as those found in Amiga World magazine. Remember that a Genlock is as important as the computer when creating desktop videos. Let's take a moment and review the 10 most important things about the desktop video revolution. Number 1, videotape has changed the way we look at movies. 2, producing a desktop video is affordable and within most budgets. Number 3, quality of content will always be the key to success. Number 4, SVHS and Hi8 are the formats of choice for desktop video. Number 5, the Amiga is the ideal desktop video tool. Number 6, a Genlock is as important as the computer for desktop production. Number 7, Genlocks are available for just a few $100s. Number 8, a complete desktop video system can be built for under $3,000. Number 9, the most important requirement for desktop video production is desire. And number 10, desktop video is another phrase for sound motion pictures. Let's outline a basic desktop video system. You'll need an Amiga, a color monitor, disk drives for program and data storage, a Genlock for getting the image onto videotape, and a video recording device. With this equipment alone, it will be possible to create stunning animated stories like this one. The first thing to consider when planning a desktop video is the style of production you are planning. Many people are interested in generating animated or graphics-oriented projects, while others will want to produce complete shows with actors, sets, titles, and graphics. From a production viewpoint, creating a computer-generated show is simple. All you need is a computer, Genlock, software, and video recorder, such as the system we've just described. For many people, this will be a common desktop video system. Francisco Cuevas is a graphics designer and animator based in Los Angeles, California. His graphics are used every night on the Channel 52 News, and he works extensively with the Amiga and videotape.
It doesn't matter how much the machine can do. If the artist isn't any good, that's it. That's the end of the story. And I consider myself pretty qualified. I know I have a lot of knowledge in design. So putting my knowledge accompanied with the machine, it makes a really good team. The technical people back there, you know, they're people that are used to work with Paintbox, the Aurora systems, CQs, and you name it. There's a lot of them in the market. And they're really impressed that we're putting this on the air in an Amiga. They're actually, they go like, wow, this is great. You're doing this on your Amiga? And I go, yeah.
Working with a computer and video is a good method of learning about the capabilities of your production and direction skills. It's also a good method of storyboarding or planning how the show will look using the Amiga. We'll discuss advanced animation techniques in another video. Live-action video production is more complex. Even if you grab your camcorder and run out to shoot, combining the results with a computer-generated animation or graphic required more equipment and planning than basic animation to tape. Live-action video is what most people will concentrate on. Personal documentaries are becoming the makeup of family history. Weddings, birthdays, and important family outings are all to be captured on video. Combining those events with animations, graphics, and titles are what desktop video is all about. If you already own a camera, then you'll probably want to hang on to it. There are a few tips for getting quality images even from older equipment. 1, make sure you clean your camcorder before and after each shoot. Dirt is a threat to quality. 2, use the best quality tapes available when recording. Whenever possible, buy professional grade tape. 3, learn to use the camera in manual mode. Turn off the auto zoom and autofocus and practice doing it manually. Number 4, eliminate weak spots whenever possible. For example, if the microphone is poor, replace it. There are a variety of aftermarket microphones, lenses, lens adapters, and so on, available at reasonable prices. If your camera technique is good and the subject you are shooting is interesting, you're miles ahead of your neighbor with the latest gear and no talent. Remember, people expect a certain quality from desktop video productions. Watching a good movie or video can be a stimulating experience for the aspiring desktop video producer.
The fact that you can rent a tape for $2 or $3 of a classic film and study that tape, look at it 6, 7 times, suddenly puts audio-visual cinema, materials on the same level as books. You can go to a library, you can get these for virtually nothing, and you can grow as a filmmaker in a way that would be impossible 10, 15, 20 years ago.
The most important things to understand are the subject matter and what you want to get across to your viewer. At first, that might sound too simplistic, but give it some thought. You need to evaluate these 2 points in detail before you begin. If you don't, the various distractions and optional possibilities will occur during the production and increase your cost, time to produce, and overall confusion. What is your subject matter? Can anyone understand it immediately? If not, what type of explanation is required? How long will it take to make your point? The shorter a video is, the more chance you have of capturing your viewer. Remember, you're working with visuals now, so it should take less time to explain the video's message. What do you want to say? Often people create videos that show a number of objects, movements, and so forth, but that don't say anything. There are 3 steps to planning the story portion of a video as follows. Number 1, the treatment. This is a short 10 to 30 page overview of the video presentation. It should outline characters, storyline, and points of key impact. Remember that this is an overview of your show. Don't add overly descriptive dialogue to a video treatment. Keep it simple and direct. Number 2 is the script. The script is a scene-by-scene, sometimes 40 to 130 pages, reporting of the production. Each scene is described in detail, including the characters' motions and camera positions, everything they say, as well as how the scene visually begins and ends. Number 3 is the storyboards. Storyboards are visual descriptions of key sequences in the production. Their purpose is to give the director and the crew the flavor of the production. Traditionally, treatments and scripts have been created using typewriters. Storyboards have been hand-drawn on paper. Since you are creating computer video productions, there's no reason why you shouldn't use your computer for all of these functions. One of the benefits of using the computer for storyboards is the ability to use the same art in the final production.
I use animation for especially storyboards. I found it really useful. The fact that I can create movement on the screen for a certain product, let's say a cereal box. The guy wants to see a cereal box. I draw the cereal box first, then I create a sequence. I want to see the cereal box going from one left of the screen to the right side. So I create a sequence, which is pretty easy. You just create how many frames do you want. I want to say 100 frames. every time you move a frame, you change the box a bit. Once you play a loop of it, you see the thing flying on the screen. The clients love it.
I think storyboards are great, particularly if you have the time for them. Often you don't have the time, but I'm a firm believer in preparation, and storyboards are all about preparation, thinking through your project before you shoot. You can save time, money, and you can get it right the first time. So I use storyboards when I can. Very, very simple storyboards really that are just about, even with stick figures, just show, whether you go from long shot to close up and how you intercut and that kind of thing. I always use a shot list whenever possible, and that's simply ahead of time writing down all the shots that you want to get, because in the heat of shooting, particularly in documentaries, you can forget and say, oh my God, I forgot that long shot, or I forgot that establishing shot, or that cutaway. So storyboards, yes, whenever you can do it, you're ahead. Shot lists, absolutely. And then, there's situations where you haven't had time for anything, where something's just happening, and if you've practiced doing that enough, you'll just be able to do your shot list in your head as you go for it. But, I like storyboards.
The next step is to list all of the equipment you'll be using for your production. Don't include post-production editing equipment. An equipment list will include video equipment, computer equipment, software, and support materials. One of the most commonly forgotten elements to a production planning meeting is the support materials. If you forget these items, your production will usually fall into the depths of confusion. Remember that every production, no matter how simple, will require the use of pens, paper, tape, petty cash, and telephone calls. Planning ahead saves aggravation and added cost. For more experienced videographers, these words become a motto they swear by. Camera work is often considered an art. Creative use of camera angles and focus can make a show more exciting. One of the problems with many home videographers is their lack of basic camera skills. These skills are actually easy to learn. This is another area where shooting with video pays off. Shooting with video allows you to play back your shoot immediately, so you can compare what you see with your camera technique. Becoming a seasoned and experienced camera person takes time and involves many different techniques. However, it's easy to learn the basics of operating a camera. With some simple techniques and practice, your videos will have a professional look and quality.
This is a Sony Hi8 video camera. Whatever model camera you have, it's very important to absolutely get familiar with it. It's like driving a car. If you have to, really think about what you're doing, you're not at the stage of really being able to do good work with it. So you have to know all the buttons. You have to get very familiar, very comfortable with any camera that you use. And each model is a little different. Therefore, if you know one model thoroughly, it's still going to take you a while to get familiar with another model. In essence, however, in principle, they're all the same. They have a lens, they have an exposure device, and they have a focusing device on the lens, okay? I would advise getting a camera that you can defeat the automatic functions, because you may want to widen the aperture of the lens, get a little more light, or stop it down a little, regardless of the automatic feature. And you may want to focus in a certain way, regardless of the automatic feature. Okay, so here you have the zoom control, automatic zoom control, or you can use this as a manual zoom. You also have the ability here to manually set the aperture. And as far as focus, you have the focusing ring here to focus manually. Essentially, what's important is when you look through here that you're getting the image that you want at exactly the right angle and the right composition. And that's the same for any camera. If you don't have a good sense of composition, if you don't know the difference between a good shot and a bad shot, you're in trouble. And a lot of that can be learned and studied, but ultimately you have to reach that point where you know what you want and you know if you're getting it.
One of the most important things to learn when using a camera is how to hold the camera steady. Many people try to hold the camera up and away from their bodies like this, and see how the camera results are jittery? In order to get steady camera results, hold the camera closer to your body. Hold your arms in, as demonstrated here. By holding your arms in like this, you won't get tired as easily, and your arms will act more like a brace against your body. Once you've learned about holding the camera steady, you may want to experiment with the automatic focus. Most cameras allow you to disable the automatic focus. This can prove useful when creating special effects or scene transitions. Try starting out a scene out of focus, then slowly bring the subject into focus like this.
On the typical amateur camera, they have things like autofocus and they have things like auto exposure. Both are great in a lot of situations. A lot of documentary situations, things are happening fast. Autofocus, if it is a fast autofocus and there's no lag, could be very good, and the same with auto exposure. Mostly, however, in professional work, even if we have those on the camera, we defeat them, we turn them off. We like, generally speaking, to do manual focus and to set the exposure the way we want it and leave it there. Because what you get is, if the camera's making the decisions for you, regardless of reason, thought, and purpose, you'll find that if somebody walks between you and the subject you're filming and it's on automatic focus, that the focus will suddenly change, and you don't want that. So I would say that you don't really need a lot of, if that's a fancy thing, autofocus and auto exposure. And in fact, you should try to find a camera when you get one that you can defeat that for the times that you want to defeat it.
Zoom lenses are found on almost all camcorders. The zoom lens allows you to move into or away from a subject. They work in much the same manner as a zoom lens on a still camera, except most camcorders have an auto zoom that will move the lens while you hold a button.
The zoom lens is generally way overused, way overused. You see people pick up a video camera, and because it has a zoom lens and because the tape is so cheap, they tend to use it like a garden hose. They point it here, they point it there, they zoom in and they zoom out. And what I teach is to use the video camera as if it's a film camera. Use the video camera as if it costs 50 cents a second, the way film does. Use it thinking as you use it. Don't use a gimmick for the sake of it's a gimmick. Unless it has a reason, a storytelling reason, don't use it. And therefore, the zoom lens, generally, I use in cinema verite work where life is going on, where something's happening, and where you want to change the image size, and you can't interrupt the action and say, stop a moment, I want to change the image size. You keep the sound going, you keep the image going, and you zoom in and you change the image size. That's great in cinema verite. You're using it for that purpose. You can also use the zoom lens for emphasis, where you want to kind of create a feeling of this is an important moment, and you move maybe very slowly in on somebody who's talking. And for de-emphasis, where you want to release tension and widen out a little. That works. That's nice. But zooming, unless it's motivated, is distracting. Anything in filmmaking, unless it's motivated, is distracting.
Panning the camera is another often used and basic technique. If your subject is moving, or if you want to establish a scene, you may often find a pan or a side-to-side motion useful. Here again, a little experience pays off. In order to maintain a steady picture, it's important that the camera not move up or down while you pan. Hold the camera steady with your arms in, as we previously explained, and create the pan with your body, moving your upper torso. Make sure your feet are square and comfortable prior to starting the shot. Don't turn your head when panning. Make sure you move your torso as it provides a strong and steady support for the camera. Also, unless you are creating an effect, don't move too quickly or slowly when panning. Of course, another method of shooting is with the use of a tripod. There are a variety of tripods on the market, ranging in price from less than $100 to several $1,000s.
In shooting, you have to be able to move from the tripod to handheld and back to the tripod. So you look for certain things in a tripod. One is you want a tripod that's very sturdy but also lightweight, that moves quickly. You also look for some quick mounting device so that you don't have to fiddle with screws when you put your camera on the tripod, something bayonet mount of some sort that you can release quickly and put in quickly. Most of all, in a tripod, you look for very, very smooth, fluid action. You must find a tripod that when you want to pan, you get a smooth move, a slow start and a slow end, whether it's a tilt, which is the up and down vertical movement, or whether it's a horizontal movement of a pan. So smoothness of the head, you check. And if you ever have to rent a tripod, you never take that tripod out of the rental house without checking it, because even if it's a good tripod, it may be out of adjustment, it may not be working properly. No point in having a tripod unless it's real smooth in the moves. I also look for a tripod that is a multi-stage as far as height. Until recently, you had to get a baby legs if you wanted to go low on a tripod, and then a regular legs if you wanted to be up at eye level. Now they have two-stage tripods where you can go all the way from very low baby legs up to normal in one set of legs. Big saving in time.
In many cases, you'll want the bulk of your show to be assembled without any after-the-fact editing. You may add credits to the beginning and end of your show, but nothing else. This is an excellent way to begin creating videos. Shooting without editing teaches you to compose scenes, think your show through, and avoid wasting tape, time, and money. Many film schools require their students to create a film or video without editing.
In teaching production shooting, I often teach cutting in the camera. That means that instead of shooting the way one normally does on a production, which is get 30 seconds of this shot and 30 seconds of that shot and 30 seconds of that shot, and then in the editing room, you know, combine them in the right order and the right lengths. I teach, as you shoot, think about how it's going to cut and shoot as much as possible in the order that it's going to be in the final product. Therefore, it does two things. One, it saves a lot of time and gives a product almost immediately that's coherent, that makes sense, that goes from beginning, middle, and end. And also, it teaches you to think in terms of editing. It teaches you to think, okay, I have enough of this long shot, now I better go in and get a medium shot, closer shot. Okay, now I have enough of this, I want to go in and get a cut-in of this detail. Okay, now I better back off and get another shot. It teaches you, again, to be very conversant with the language of film. And it's just a good way to teach, a good discipline to develop this cutting in the camera.
One important rule when videotaping is called the 1/3 rule. The horizon should either be 1/3 of the way at the bottom or the top of the screen. If the horizon is in the middle of the picture, it will break the image in two, eliminating any dimension to the acting or action taking place.
In talking about lighting, in documentary lighting, I like the effect to be that there is no lighting. And what I like to see in documentaries, my own and in others, is really what looks like available light. Whereas in actuality, it may not be pure available light, it may be all lit, but the effect should be naturalness, motivation. And very often in documentary filming, you do use available light and you just supplement it, like in shooting in hospitals where there's a lot of overhead fluorescent, plenty of light level, but there are circles under the eyes from the fluorescence. Everyone looks like a raccoon. We often use an umbrella reflector with a blue surface to match the color temperature of the fluorescent lights and just fill in the eyes a little. That's what I would call supplementing the available light in a way that you don't notice that there's any lights being used. Whenever possible in documentaries, we try to use no lights. And one thing to think about when you go and you plan your shooting, sometimes it's just as easy to find a location or a set where there's great natural light as this location or set where it's like a dark cave and you can hardly see anything and you have to use a lot of light. So the selection of the set and finding great natural available light is like half the battle in lighting. Then after that, in documentaries, we often use bounce light, where with one light, we can actually pump it into the ceiling or into the wall. It'll bounce around and just create a nice lighting effect without having to do the standard key light, backlight, fill light, kicker light, and all that kind of thing, which creates too much commotion in doing documentaries, takes too much time.
In many cases, you'll record the sound for your show when you shoot. Often, you'll want to add some additional sounds later. This is called overdubbing or audio dubbing. With most consumer equipment, you'll be limited in the methods you'll have available. For example, if you don't use frame-accurate professional equipment, you won't be able to shoot a person speaking and re-record it matching the movement of the mouth. You can add music or narration after a shoot. Most recorders feature an audio dub control. This allows you to record a second channel of sound or music to an existing tape without erasing the previous sound or picture. Some older units will allow you to add sound, but will erase the original soundtrack.
I believe in teaching and doing films so that the visual carries the story, and that as much as possible you can understand the story even if you did turn out the sound, but the sound brings it to life. It's dead without the sound. The sound makes it just really right there, and therefore music for mood, crisp, clear sound for dialogue, it's essential. It's absolutely essential. And if there's bad sound, as one often sees, even on professional work, even on networks, in documentaries particularly, the sound is a little hard to understand, a little hard to hear. It's a chore to understand it. It's bad. I mean, you got to have technically very, very good sound. And then the use of sound and the juxtaposition of sound and picture, that becomes then an editing technique. And it all becomes like music, and it becomes as intricate or as simple as you want to be. But the relationship of image to sound, sound to image, is what combines in the mind to create effects that you want.
There are a number of advanced audio recording techniques, both for production and post-production, that we'll cover in another tape. When recording from the Amiga to videotape, it's important to make sure to get the best possible quality. This involves some planning and common sense. First of all, make sure you use quality tape. It doesn't make any sense to spend thousands of dollars on a Genlock and try and save a few bucks on cheaper tape.
The image is still being really good when it's put on tape. That's one of the things, the qualities that I like about the Genlock. The Genlock actually transfers the image with no distortion into tape. It's pretty good. It's really good.
Next, make sure the cables you use to connect the Amiga Genlock output to the video recorder are high quality. Here again, it pays to spend a few extra dollars on high-grade connections. This is a common area for equipment failure, and if your signal isn't good, the first thing to check is the cabling. Every videographer learns from experience. Unfortunately, many of these learning experiences involved ruined shoots or shows. In order to curb the loss of hair and sleep among desktop video producers around the world, here are some tips to guide you through a professional quality video production. Number 1, buy a camera cleaning kit. A still camera kit is fine, but make sure it includes a set of lens wipes, a dust blower, and some cleaning swabs. Prior to each new camera shot, check the camera's lens and operating mechanism for dust and dirt. Number 2, get a UV filter for your camera. In most conditions, a UV or ultraviolet filter will not change the visual appearance of your image, but it will protect your camera lens from damage. Number 3, use a quality tripod when shooting interviews or static scenes. Sure, a handheld look is popular in many places, but often a steady image is more likely to get your message across. Number 4, create a spares kit. If anything can fail, it probably will. So keep an extra camera battery, some extra audio cables, spare video tape, and an extra external mic handy. Many cameras have a second small lithium battery in them for keeping track of the date and so on. Often, if this fails, the entire camera is useless. So keep an extra lithium cell on hand as well. Number 5, check the continuity of your show. If you're shooting in the sunlight, watch the angle of the sun. Be careful not to let the shadows on your subject's faces change too much. Also, check to make sure a person with a hat on keeps it on whenever in the scene. Props misplaced lead to a lack of continuity and unwanted comedy in your show. Number 6, use a quality microphone for recording audio. An excellent method of improving the overall look and feel of a show is improving the quality of recorded sound. If your camcorder has one of the newer mics, you're in good shape. Otherwise, invest in a quality dynamic microphone and reap the benefits of better sound. Number 7, use the best grade of videotape available. It's cheap insurance and it works. Poor quality tape will ruin a show. Metal particle-coated professional tape will give your show its best shot at clarity and reliability. Number 8, always keep a script and shot sheet on hand. It sounds funny, but forgetting the script is a common problem with desktop producers. Then when winging it, a critical shot is forgotten and the show is jeopardized. Number 9, don't use too many special effects. If you want to create a dream sequence and your camera has a posterization feature, don't use it anywhere else in the show, no matter how tempting. Limited use of visual effects add dimension and character to a video. Too many effects make the show look cheap and detract from the story. Number 10, don't undershoot. If you get too much action or run the camera too long, it's possible to fix the show through editing. And if you stop recording too soon, there will be nothing you can do to save the shot. It's a good idea to run the tape for a second or two prior to the action, and then for a second or two after the action stops. One of the more common styles of desktop production involves documentary work. Birthdays, weddings, and celebrations are common documentary themes. When shooting a documentary, it's important to capture the action on tape and also be aware of everything around you. At first, that might sound like a difficult assignment, but once you get the hang of it, people will wonder how you get so much material into your videos.
In documentary filmmaking, you have to learn how to work on the tripod and off the tripod and go back and forth very quickly. There are shots in documentaries where you absolutely want to be on the tripod. Shots where, let's say, establishing shots where nothing much is moving. You're showing buildings in a street or so forth, and there's no reason for the camera to be wobbling or moving or be handheld. You want to be rock steady on a tripod. In the next moment in doing a documentary, you may want to be following somebody out of a car, down the sidewalk, and into a house. You have to be handheld. So you have to be able to get that camera right off the tripod and move in and do handheld work. And the real key and the real challenge is to do handheld camera work as if it's a Steadicam, as if it's on a dolly. You generally speaking don't want to know or feel that it's handheld.
Titles are an important element of any video program. Titles can be used for a variety of purposes besides the traditional credit roll at the end of a show. Titles are an effective method of sending a message, either about a location or to accent a point. Titles are also important when conducting interviews. They introduce the audience to the person on camera. Titles are also important when producing translations. It's important to be consistent when using titles. Sometimes a producer will get creative and use several different fonts. If you decide this is the way you want to go, keep a few guidelines in mind. Typically, use the same font and point size for all names. Don't use more than one color for each face being used. Don't let the fonts get too small. Remember, you may be creating a tape that will be copied several times, so make sure the font you select will hold up after it's been dubbed. There are a number of excellent titling packages available for the Amiga. Many provide their own set of fonts designed for output to video. Choosing a font can be important. If you're creating an animated story as a spoof, you'll want to pick a font that jogs the audience's memory, as with this scene from Lost in Scape by James Robinson. On the other hand, if you're creating a documentary, then you may want to use a more modern or elegant font. The Helvetica family of fonts is a good example of a clean sans serif font for use in a modern or documentary show. Let's take a closer look at selecting several different fonts from several different programs. First of all, let's take a look at the font requester in Deluxe Paint 3. Let's start by loading Deluxe Paint 3. Select medium resolution and always select overscan with video. Now, looking on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the tool for text right here. If you press the left mouse button, you'll be able to type with the pre-selected font, as we're demonstrating here. Simply move the cursor to anywhere you want on the page and begin typing. The text will automatically move to the next line when it gets to the end of the page like this, or you can type the return key and move it to the next line whenever you wish. By the way, if you make the page larger than the screen, the text will continue on the same line, but this isn't a common practice when working with video titles. If you make a mistake, you can backspace to correct your error. However, once you click the text cursor elsewhere on the screen, the text you typed is stamped to the page and cannot be altered unless you erase it and start over. You can work with any color in the palette by clicking on the palette and then typing. For example, let's click on yellow and type a bit. Now let's click on blue and type. If you want to change the color of text already stamped to the page, you can select the Fill tool, click on the color you want, and then position the cursor over each letter and change the color. Remember that when changing the color of text, always use the foreground colors and not the background colors of the palette. Refer to your Deluxe Paint user guide for more information on palettes. In order to select a different font, you'll need to click with the right mouse button. Once you've done that, you'll see a new requestor. This is the Choose Font requestor. With this requestor, you'll be able to select any font you've loaded into your Amiga system. Notice the fonts are in a box on the left side of the screen. You can scroll through the list using the scroll gadget. And once you've selected a font, you can select any of the available sizes by clicking on the up or down gadgets in the upper right portion of the requestor. You can also create some special effects, such as bold, italic, and underline, by clicking in the appropriate button. Once you've selected the desired options for the font you wish to use, click on the Show button to see how the font will look. At the very bottom of the requestor is an edit field called Drawer. This allows you to load fonts from another disk or drawer. By the way, there are a number of color fonts available that you may wish to use. Prior to loading Deluxe Paint 3, you'll need to load the program called Color Text. Color Text comes with Deluxe Paint and can be found on the program disk. When working with color fonts, you may see this requestor asking if you want to use the font's palette. If you do, the choice is yours. Often, in order to get the proper look of a font, it's a good idea to say yes and proceed typing once you get the screen cursor. Once the font is on the screen, you can move it around by making it a brush with the Brush Selector tool. Then you can reposition it wherever you'd like. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Several Amiga programs will allow you to create some wonderful special effects. Let's take a look at Aegis Video Titler for a moment and see what types of options are available to you. Let's load the program and select the overscan mode. We're assuming that you may know a bit about Video Titler here, so if you're confused about basic operation, please refer to the program user guide. Now let's select a Video Titler font. With these fonts, you can adjust the size and positioning of the font quickly and easily. Okay, let's type in The End. Now let's increase the size a bit. Notice the rectangle around the letters. You can grab one of these and move the text like this. You can stretch, compress, and realign the text as you see fit. You can even move the text to be upside down. Okay, now we've got the text positioned, so let's add some special effects. Select the Effects menu and a large requestor will appear. From here you can select one of a number of effects. Let's take a look at Neon and see what it looks like. The more complex the effect, the longer it will take for the font to appear on the screen, as the computer is working to create the various colors and imaging. A little tip is to do all of the text positioning prior to adding any effects. You can also use the function keys on your Amiga keyboard to select effects. And here are a few examples of effects on this font. In many cases, you may use the Amiga and a Genlock to add titles to a live-action show. There are a variety of subtle techniques to consider that may add some extra quality to the video you're producing. Connect and set up your Genlock in the same manner as you ordinarily would. Load the title software and position a sample of the title you want on the screen. If you're going to record fonts on a black or graphic background, you won't need to worry about live-action video and the resulting matte process. Just position each font and begin recording. The most common positioning for fonts is centered on the screen. An interesting variation on that theme is to justify the fonts to the right, like this. To Genlock onto a live image, create the title you want as we've done here. Now roll the tape with the live image you want. With the Genlock connected, test the image to see if the title lines up in the right place. If it doesn't, you can move it around like this to get the positioning right. Once you're satisfied, then roll tape and record as you normally would. One of the things most notable about the Amiga is its ability to animate. Although animation is a powerful capability for any personal computer, it's important not to overuse it. Titles are often over-animated. Sometimes a beginning animator will jump into an animation sequence because he has the tool available. Well, it turns out that this is not always the good idea. One element of titling that is usually underused is perspective. You can create magical perspectives with Deluxe Paint and other Amiga software programs. When working with perspective, you are usually working within a 3D environment. There is an X, Y, and Z axis on which your titles will be positioned. Let's create a title with some perspective. First, let's create the title using the methods already described. Now let's save the title as a D-Paint brush. This will prove useful as you may wish to use the title again in the future. Now, clear the page. Okay, load the brush into memory. Now select Perspective Do from the Effects menu. You'll see a small crosshair on the page. This represents the X and Y axis of the title. The Z axis runs perpendicular to the X and Y, but hang on, we'll show you how that works in just a moment. You can adjust the perspective of the title using the keyboard of your Amiga. The number 7 and 8 will add or subtract a single value from the X axis, while the 4 and 5 will do the same thing for the Y axis. If you want to adjust the Z axis, you can use the 1 or 2. The 9, 6, and 3 reset the original positions of each of the 3 axes. If you want to completely start over, you can use the 0. Let's position the text like this, holding down the number 2, then the number 5. See what happens to the text? Of course, you'll want to experiment with this, but rest assured, once you get the hang of it, you'll want to use this technique a lot. Adding motion to your titles can add dimension and impact to your show. This example, created in Deluxe Paint 3, shows some of the variations that are possible when adding movement to titles. As we indicated earlier, animation is a sophisticated element of desktop video, and we'll cover it in detail in an upcoming videotape. Once you've spent a few days in the field with a camera, you'll probably be fired up to finish your project as quickly as possible. After all, you've spent a lot of valuable time planning, rehearsing, and producing the production phases of your show. So what can be left? The post-production process, which centers around editing your show, can be both the easiest and most complex portion of creating a videotape. Post-production includes a number of steps, all involving the completion of your show after the production phase. These steps include assembling the video and audio portions of the show, adding any animations and/or graphics that may exist, mixing the sound to ensure proper volume and stereo imaging, adding titles to the head and the tail, and creating duplication masters. Editing is a complex process and has an almost limitless number of different techniques available. So for this video, we'll concentrate on an introduction and an overview into editing. In our next desktop videotape, we'll explain how to create both assemble and insert edits. Basically, if you want to edit a show, all you need to do is pick the scenes you want and re-record them, or a portion of them, like the audio, onto another tape. Since there is no cutting, no scissors involved, the risk of losing your original work is greatly reduced. While on the subject of master tapes, this is a good time to mention protecting your masters. Almost all video cassettes have tabs or plugs that, when removed, will prevent you from recording onto the cassette. Make sure you remove this tab from each master you don't plan on using again. If for some reason you later decide to record on the tape, either replace the plug or you can put some tape over an empty slot. The ability to give form and continuity to a series of short clips of sound and motion requires patience, a good eye for detail, and an undying love for what you do. Video editing can be one of the most rewarding and most frustrating aspects of video production. As you gain experience, you'll know what type of post-production you plan on using before you even begin the pre-production phase of a project. Usually, you either have a budget or the equipment already in place, so you'll know what your limitations are. Most desktop video producers create a single edit or an online edit from their source material. Essentially, they build a final show from their various original tapes. For most of these producers, that means assembling a series of VHS or 8mm tapes from one player to a recorder. For simple jobs, that system may work well. For example, if you're looking for various sites to build a new office building, you may have 10 independent pieces of video with narration already in place. All you need to do is assemble the beginning and end of each sequence into one complete overview of the site search. If your production has more scenes and variations than a site search, I would recommend taking a few more steps prior to executing the final edit. You may not be required to go through the motions of creating a preliminary or offline edit, but you will take a closer look at your work and plan your actions accordingly. Let's assume you're going to edit a 10-minute overview on the real estate market in your neighborhood. You've already shot 5 cassettes of video, including interviews, shots of various houses, and some filler, including sunsets and people shaking hands in front of a sold sign on a house. Your job will be to edit the video together, adding a few computer-generated graphics and titles. The equipment you will use will consist of high-end consumer equipment, including an SVHS player and an SVHS recorder, a consumer edit controller, a personal computer with a Genlock, and software. The first step in your editing process should be to make copies of all master tapes, adding in a Genlocked clock to help you find specific materials as you plan your edit. Set the clock to 1 o'clock for the first tape, 2 o'clock for the second, and so on. If your master tapes are more than an hour long, then set the clock for 2 hours apart on each new reel. Position the clock in the lower left or right-hand corner of the display so it won't interfere with the primary action taking place on the screen. Some people may think that using the counter on the VCR will be enough. It usually isn't. Most consumer VCRs do not actually show the actual time on the tape, but rather a time relative to the tape speed and the mode. In some cases, the counter merely registers numbers. Taking the extra time and adding a clock to the image will keep everything simple and relatively accurate. Once you've made copies of each original master, put the masters in a safe place. By the way, make sure you've completely and properly labeled the original tapes and remove or break off the little recording tabs. This will prevent accidentally recording over a poorly labeled original tape. Now that the originals are safe, spend some time reviewing each of the duplicate or work print tapes. Keep the script close by and begin building the show in your mind. Find the scenes that look good and start a log of these scenes. Indicate where they go in the show. Provide a page and scene reference number and include the start and end time provided by the clock on the screen. Soon, you'll have a series of pages of scrawled information on the various scenes and where they fit into the show. Now, hopefully you won't be missing any video scenes that haven't been recorded. If you are, it's back to the production phase. If everything is okay, then it's time to start editing. Remember that the tape has no information on it when you crack the seal. The first step is to get a continuous form of control track on the tape. I record black from the computer for the entire tape. This is called blacking. By recording this signal onto the tape, there's a continuous stream of control track pulses from the head to the tail of the tape onto which the recorder can lay additional information. This usually helps to prevent a few frames of distorted or whipped image when a new edit begins. It's simple and it works. Now remember that you'll be building your show from beginning to end without any special effects like wipes and dissolves. This is called assemble editing. Now, using your edit decision list, begin building the show one edit at a time. Let's pretend the first edit is an establishing shot of the neighborhood. Cue the beginning point or the end point for the recorder and the player. Next, set the out point for the end of the edit. Now, prior to actually creating the edit, let's make sure everything is okay. So let's preview the edit. Most editing controllers include a preview button. This allows you to go through the mechanics of the edit without the recorder entering the record mode. Now you can execute or perform the edit. Usually, most equipment will automatically stop the machines as soon as the edit is complete. Sometimes you might want to enter in only the start points for an edit. And if you do, you'll need to press stop on your own to end the edit. Now repeat the process for the next scene. This is a good time to mention overlap. In frame-accurate editing, you can begin a new scene after the last frame of the previous scene. However, when creating a control track edit, you don't want to run the risk of having a few frames of black between each edit, so some overlap is required. Okay, you're putting the show together and everything is looking great. Now you need to add some computer-generated material. Either you'll have the material on tape, as described in the computer shoot, or you'll want to lay the graphics onto the master tape live. You don't lose a generation by recording onto tape and then re-recording onto the edit master. You also have the ability to make changes if needed. Remember, you may have assembled a portion of the show by the time you need the graphics, so changing the background color to match the previous shot or adding a few seconds in length is easy. Once you've completed the closing credits, the show is complete. You've created a complete show from beginning to end with your master tapes. This edit session was a direct online style edit. Building a show with a direct online is fine when the only person you have to answer to is yourself. On the other hand, if you're building a show for someone else, you may need them to authorize or sign off on the project. If you're going to produce that type of show, you'll want to consider an offline edit. We'll discuss offline and advanced audio in another video. There are lots of hardware accessories available to the desktop video producer. There are effects switchers, video selectors, color correctors, and more. The list of hardware and software goodies is long and growing every day. It's important to use care when selecting video hardware. Although there are a large number of devices available, many are merely gimmicks that will do little to aid your video production skills. Remember the basics when shopping for peripherals. Will this device help me make higher quality shows? If the answer is yes, then ask around and get lots of opinions, and remember to buy from quality manufacturers only. On the software side, make sure you have the utility software to recover damaged files and back up your hard disk if you have one. Make sure you keep your Amiga in excellent working condition. It's a good idea to keep the computer covered when not in use. The electronics inside are a beacon for dust and dirt. Keeping the computer covered will keep it healthy. And now it's time for our top 10 quality tips for editing results. Edit graphics directly to tape. Use fade to black between scenes. Black tape prior to use. Avoid too many edits in a single second. Don't use technical overkill. Rewind source tapes after each session. Make copies of all originals for long life. Create even a basic edit list that you can rely on. Don't overwork your equipment. Don't be constrained by all of the rules. Experiment. Okay, so you're ready to hit the streets. Producing your first desktop video. You should be familiar with video formats, basic camera work, basic production, basic editing, and post-production techniques and video titling. If Future videos will focus on specific instruction for 2D and 3D animation, animated titling, advanced camera work, and production techniques. And don't forget the most important rule when producing a desktop video. The value of content wins out over production effects. Go for the best quality show based on the storyline, and you'll be able to build a winner every time.